Welcome to one of the most unsettling cases ever recorded in Alabama's history. Before we begin, take a moment to tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time of day or night you're hearing this story. These accounts have traveled far, and we're curious where and when they are being heard. In the autumn of 1851, a routine entry in the Montgomery County records noted something unusual. Willow Creek Plantation, owned by the widow Elizabeth Caldwell, had produced a harvest nearly 30% larger than any neighboring estate, despite employing significantly fewer field hands. At first, the discrepancy attracted little attention, but that changed the following winter, when a brief line appeared in the county ledger. Inquiry requested into unusual activity at Willow Creek Plantation. Denied due to insufficient cause. No explanation followed. No investigation was recorded, and the matter quietly disappeared from official view. Willow Creek lay 15 miles outside Montgomery, positioned near a slow, shallow bend in the Alabama River. The main house, built in 1798, was among the earliest grand estates in the region. By mid-century, the three-story mansion showed signs of age, ivy climbing its eastern wall, paint peeling from its shutters, yet it retained an air of restrained dignity. What set Willow Creek apart was not its architecture, but its mistress. Elizabeth Caldwell became sole owner at just 27. After her husband, Thomas, died unexpectedly in the spring of 1849. His cause of death was recorded as brain fever. The marriage produced no children. Those familiar with Thomas described him as a ruthlessly efficient plantation owner, notorious for the harsh discipline imposed on the 53 enslaved people under his control. Elizabeth, by contrast, had been almost invisible during their marriage, pale, quiet, and reclusive. She rarely appeared at social events and was rumored to spend most of her days in the plantation's extensive library. After Thomas's death, neighbors assumed the widow would sell the property, or at least appoint an overseer. She did neither. Tax records from 1850 show that Elizabeth reduced the enslaved workforce from 53 to 38, selling 15 men to a plantation farther south. Those who remained were largely women, children, and older men. Yet despite this reduction, production did not decline. Shipping manifests from the Montgomery docks reveal that cotton yields increased by nearly 20% in the year following Thomas Caldwell's death. Montgomery society largely ignored the widow. She attended church irregularly, declined invitations, and was described as distant to the point of discourtesy. But some noticed a change. Margaret Holcomb, the minister's wife, wrote to her sister in Virginia, "She carries herself differently now. There is something in her eyes that was not there before. A certainty, perhaps, or something colder." What truly occurred at Willow Creek between 1849 and 1851 remains uncertain. The story has been reconstructed from scattered records, private correspondence, and one crucial document, the journal of Dr. Samuel Whitaker, discovered in 1963 during renovations of his former office in downtown Montgomery. According to Whitaker, he was summoned to Willow Creek on December 12, 1850, for what Elizabeth described as a matter requiring discretion. Having served as Thomas Caldwell's physician, Whitaker was surprised to find the plantation in exceptional order. The house was meticulously maintained, despite the dismissal of many servants. "The widow appears transformed," Whitaker wrote. "Where once she seemed perpetually fearful, she now commands a calm authority remarkable for a woman managing alone." As his entries continue, the tone darkens. Whitaker describes being asked to supply medical materials, bandages, laudanum, antiseptics, splints, for injuries he was not permitted to see. Elizabeth claimed several field hands had been hurt in an accident and insisted on treating them herself under his guidance. The severity of the supplies suggested injuries far worse than routine farm labor would produce. On his third visit, Whitaker recorded something far more troubling. While waiting in Elizabeth's study, he felt a draft behind a bookcase. Upon closer inspection, he realized the shelving could be moved, revealing a narrow staircase descending beneath the house. Before he could explore further, Elizabeth returned. "The look that crossed her face haunts me still," he wrote. "For a moment, I believed she might do me harm." The next journal entry, dated January 18, 1851, contains only a single line. "I have made a grave error in judgment. God forgive me for what I now know, and for what I have agreed not to reveal." Physical evidence would surface more than a century later. In 1967, a structural survey of the remaining foundation uncovered an extensive network of underground rooms not shown on any original plans. Historian Martin Granger's report noted signs of long-term habitation, sleeping areas, cooking spaces, and a sophisticated ventilation system designed to conceal smoke and odors. Most significant was a narrow tunnel leading from the chambers to the riverbank, hidden among willow roots and brush. It would have allowed people to enter or leave the plantation unseen. The 1850 census listed 38 enslaved individuals at Willow Creek, yet agricultural records indicate the harvest would have required at least 60 workers. This discrepancy caught the attention of tax assessor James Hargrove, who conducted an unannounced visit in February of 1851. His official report found nothing improper, but a private letter discovered decades later tells a different story. "I cannot shake the strangeness of Willow Creek," Hargrove wrote to his brother. "The fields were immaculate, yet I saw no more than 20 laborers at work. The numbers do not align." He described cabins that appeared underoccupied, and workers who moved with unusual coordination. When he questioned one woman, she replied only, "Mistress takes good care of those who work hard." Hargrove concluded his letter with a chilling observation. "There is something beneath the surface here, perhaps quite literally so." No further investigation followed. Hargrove died 3 months later of what was recorded as heart failure, despite no prior health issues. Another account comes from an unexpected source: the Journal of Abigail Foster, the 18-year-old daughter of a neighboring planter. Between October 1850 and March 1851, she recorded increasingly disturbing experiences at Willow Creek. "The house is unnaturally quiet," she wrote. "I have heard voices where none should be, and once laughter beneath the floorboards." In her final entry, dated March 12th, she wrote only, "I have seen what lies beneath. God help me, I can never unsee it." The journal ends there. Family records state Abigail was sent north shortly afterward for schooling. She never returned to Alabama. What did she see? No definitive answer exists, but circumstantial evidence suggests a possibility that would have been extraordinary for its time. The years in question coincided with increased Underground Railroad activity. A coded ledger found in Elizabeth Caldwell's desk lists initials, dates, and cryptic notes, possibly referencing escape routes by river. If true, Elizabeth Caldwell may have lived one of the most dangerous double lives imaginable, maintaining her standing in Southern society, while secretly sheltering those fleeing bondage beneath her own home. How she managed such an operation remains a mystery, but her story, like the tunnels beneath Willow Creek, reminds us that history often hides its most unsettling truths just below the surface. What ultimately became of Elizabeth Caldwell and the hidden Operation Beneath Willow Creek. By the spring of 1851, the historical record grows noticeably thin. County documents show that in April of that year, Elizabeth sold Willow Creek Plantation to a businessman from New Orleans. After that transaction, she vanished entirely from Alabama society. No census entry, no church record, no legal filing ever places her in the region again. Yet her disappearance may not have been complete. A letter uncovered in 1958 within the archives of a Boston abolitionist society refers to a Southern widow of considerable means, who had rendered extraordinary service to the cause of liberation at great personal risk, and who was now living quietly in the North under an assumed name. The letter, dated July 1851, offers no identifying details, but the timing aligns almost perfectly with Elizabeth Caldwell's sudden exit from Alabama. As for those who may have been sheltered beneath Willow Creek, their fate remains unknown. No mass graves were ever found. No evidence of violence surfaced. This absence suggests that if fugitives were hidden there, they were not discovered but successfully moved onward. The story might have ended there, buried by time, if not for an unexpected discovery during the Civil Rights era. In the 1960s, renovations to the old Montgomery courthouse revealed a sealed wall compartment containing a single document, an arrest warrant for Elizabeth Caldwell. The charges were severe: property theft and incitement to insurrection, both capital offenses, in 1851 Alabama. The warrant was dated April 10th, just days before she sold the plantation. It had never been served. On the back, written in handwriting later identified as the county sheriff's, was a brief note: "Some matters are better left undisturbed. The widow has departed. Let this depart with her." Any remaining physical evidence was lost in 1938, when the plantation house burned to the ground. No verified photographs of Elizabeth Caldwell have ever been found. Today she exists only in fragments, letters, journals, and second-hand accounts, her motivation still debated. If she did operate an underground railroad station in the heart of the Deep South, she undertook one of the most dangerous forms of resistance imaginable, to maintain the appearance of a proper Southern widow while secretly defying the very system that protected her would have required extraordinary psychological endurance. Discovery would have meant certain death. In 1969, historian Rebecca Thornton interviewed descendants of formerly enslaved families in Montgomery County. One elderly woman shared a story passed down through generations. They called her the White Witch of Willow Creek, she said, not because of magic, but because people vanished. She looked like a proper lady, but her heart belonged to freedom. Adults, she said, stopped speaking of her when children approached. Even years later, it was not safe to know too much. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Willow Creek story is what it implies about others like it. How many similar operations were never recorded? How many risks taken in silence? How many lives saved without ever being counted? The land where Willow Creek once stood is now private farmland. Only a fragment of the original stone foundation remains. Locals describe the area as unnaturally still. Some claim that when the wind moves through the remaining willows, it carries whispers. In 1968, an archaeological team attempted a full excavation of the underground rooms. The project was abandoned after repeated equipment failures and the sudden illness of the lead researcher. The site was filled in. No further academic work followed. At the Alabama State Archives today, visitors can still examine tax records, shipping manifests, and official reports. The public story of Willow Creek. But the private story, what happened beneath the fields and behind the polished facade, remains largely hidden. For a brief moment in the early 1850s, a widow named Elizabeth Caldwell oversaw a plantation that produced more than it should have, with fewer workers than it required. Questions were raised. Then abruptly they stopped. Elizabeth vanished, and with her went the truth that might have explained everything. Researchers who study Willow Creek often describe an unsettling sensation, the feeling of being watched, as though the past itself is judging who is worthy of knowing its secrets. Perhaps that is simply the discomfort of confronting history's darkest chapters. Or perhaps it is something else, the lingering vigilance of those who once risked everything to protect a fragile deception upon which lives depended. In the final entry of Dr. Whitaker's journal mentioning Willow Creek, he wrote, "Some truths are too dangerous to commit to paper. Some secrets must be carried to the grave. I have seen what the widow built beneath her house of appearances. May God and history judge her more kindly than her contemporaries would. The Alabama River still flows past the land where Willow Creek once stood. Like time itself, it carries away evidence. But occasionally the current slows and fragments resurface." In 1958, a land survey, conducted ahead of highway construction, uncovered a curious arrangement of stone markers half a mile from the plantation site. Viewed from above, they formed an arrow pointing north. Each stone bore a single letter. Together they spelled one word: follow. Beneath the final marker, buried 3 feet underground, was a metal box containing a hand-drawn map of waterways connecting the Alabama River to northern tributaries. Handwriting analysis later matched it to Elizabeth Caldwell's records. The map included notes on water depth, concealed landing points, and locations marked only as safe harbor. Along its border ran a coded message, deciphered in 1965 by a linguistics professor from Tuskegee University. It read, "25 souls delivered from bondage into light. More will follow." The river remembers what people choose to forget. This discovery strengthens the theory that Willow Creek functioned as a sophisticated underground railroad hub, using river routes to move fugitives north. Yet it also raises deeper questions. How did a Southern widow with no public abolitionist ties create such an operation? Partial answers emerged in 1964, when letters were found in the attic of Reverend William Parker, a Northern missionary stationed in Montgomery during the 1840s. One letter, addressed simply to E, suggests Elizabeth's involvement long before her husband's death. "Your position remains uniquely valuable. Observe all while appearing to see nothing. The time for action will come." Dr. Whitaker's journal offers another insight. Months before Thomas Caldwell's death, he treated Elizabeth for injuries. consistent with domestic abuse, injuries she attributed to accidents. Whitaker noted his doubts, but wrote that it was not his place to challenge a husband's authority. This suggests Elizabeth's resistance may have been shaped not only by moral conviction, but by personal suffering. The scale of what she appears to have achieved is staggering. Operating an underground railroad station anywhere in the South was perilous. Doing so alone, while maintaining a functioning plantation, borders on unimaginable. Records show she retained family units among the enslaved workers. She kept an unusual decision that suggests trust, cooperation, and shared purpose. Her purchases shifted toward preserved food, medical supplies, durable clothing, navigation texts, and eventually, food crops rather than cotton. Willow Creek was no longer just a plantation, it was a cover. Many plantation owners dismissed Elizabeth's unusual behavior as harmless eccentricity, the kind of indulgent society often labeled as feminine foolishness. In reality, this misjudgment may have been her greatest protection. What she allegedly planned was not chaos, but calculated silence. The true fate of those Elizabeth is believed to have assisted remains largely unknown. This uncertainty was not accidental. Underground escape networks were deliberately fragmented. Each participant knew only what was necessary. The next step, the next safe place, never the full route or final destination. If one person was captured, the entire system would not collapse. Yet one rare discovery offers a quiet glimpse into what may have happened. In 1962, historians examining Canadian archives uncovered a church registry from an Ontario settlement founded by formerly enslaved families. 3 households arriving in 1851 were marked with an unusual note beside their names. Delivered by the River Widow. If this phrase refers to Elizabeth, it suggests that at least some of those she helped reached freedom. But the cost of such hidden resistance extended far beyond success stories. In 1852, 1 year after Elizabeth vanished from Alabama records, 4 enslaved men from nearby plantations were executed for allegedly planning an escape. Court transcripts reveal investigators questioned them about underground rooms and the activities of a widow. Whether these men were connected to Elizabeth's operation remains unknown, but the timing raises the possibility of retaliation against those merely suspected of involvement. Elizabeth's own fate is even more uncertain. Historical records offer conflicting possibilities. In Boston Society documents from 1852, a woman resembling her appears under the name Elizabeth Rivers, a surname that may have been chosen deliberately. This woman quietly supported aid, organizations for fugitives, yet lived an unusually private life. She never married, avoided photographs, and left behind almost no personal correspondence. When she died in 1874, another theory surfaced decades later. In 1966, historian Martin Granger identified shipping records showing a woman named Elizabeth Caldwell departing Virginia for England in June 1851. Passenger logs indicate she traveled alone, carrying 6 trunks. Whether this was the same woman from Willow Creek cannot be confirmed, but the timing aligns with her disappearance. Perhaps the most compelling possibility comes not from documents, but from memory. Oral histories passed down among descendants of formerly enslaved families in the Montgomery region speak of a white woman who abandoned wealth and lived quietly among free, black communities in the North. These stories describe someone who taught reading and writing in secret, who knew when to vanish, and who carried the map of escape routes entirely in her mind. The underground rooms themselves offered one final haunting clue. During a limited archaeological excavation in 1968, researchers discovered markings carved into a limestone wall, a rough image of a tree with 25 notches etched into its trunk. Beneath it, in a different hand, were the words, "Remember us." Whether carved by someone passing through or by Elizabeth herself remains unknown. What is clear is that someone wanted the story preserved. Decades later, during the Civil Rights era, a 96-year-old woman named Sarah Johnson recalled stories her grandmother had told her. Stories of a white woman who could guide people through darkness without light. Someone who lived as one person on the surface and another beneath it. Those she helped, Sarah said, never doubted who she truly was. Today, Willow Creek bears little resemblance to its past. The land has been divided and sold repeatedly, A small historical marker acknowledges the plantation's existence, but remains silent about what may have existed beneath it. Some histories, it seems, were meant to remain underground,